All right, 7th grade, here we go. We are starting our new unit, which is going to be all about ecosystems and ecology, and we're going to start out going over some basic information that you probably already know, but you can follow along anyway, and maybe it'll be a refresher and you'll learn something maybe you didn't know. So our point of this unit is that we're going to be analyzing the flow of energy cycles of matter through ecosystems, relating to significance of how each maintains the health and stability of an ecosystem. So basically, again, like why is all of this important, especially how it interacts and connects with other living organisms and how we interact with our environment as well. So on your notes, you can print them out, you can type them in directly, you can use your own sheet of paper to write down your information. Remember, you'll get to use all of those on your test later on. When you are finished with these notes and your brain pop and your reading, do not click done for the assignment, because I'm going to leave this assignment open so that you can come back to these notes over the next few days that we have these PowerPoints. So some essential questions that we're looking at are: 1, what is ecosystems? How are organisms obtain energy in their environment? How does the energy flow and matter cycle through ecosystems? So first off, what is an ecosystem? Well, all abiotic and biotic things that interact in a particular environment. And abiotic and biotic, if you remember from anything that we've kind of talked about previously, bio meaning life, and a, if we put the A in front of it, it means without. So abiotic factors are non-living and biotic factors are living things. So here are some examples. Biotic factors, bio meaning life, anything that's living. So examples are things like producers, which are plants; consumers, things like algae, fungi, animals, not plants, those are producers. Consumers, anything that eats other stuff. Bacteria, decomposers, all of the types of things that we talked about in the last unit when we were doing the different kingdoms. Abiotic factors are non-living things, and those would be examples of things like sunlight, temperature, oxygen, soil, pH. It could also be space in the environment as well. So anything that organisms interact with their environment that is not living or a living organism. When we want to map out and see how these organisms interact with each other, we have things like food chains and food webs. The stability of an ecosystem really depends on these interactions in the populations of them living there. So feeding relationships are one type of interaction that we're going to focus on today, with this represented in food chains and food webs. A food chain is one possible pattern or energy transfer pathway versus a food web that has all possibilities of feeding patterns or energy transfer pathways. So when we're looking at food webs and food chains, it's really how the energy is flowing from one organism to another. Remember that organisms need to eat other things to be able to get their energy, or their ATPs. In the case of consumers. In the case of producers, they are going to get all of their energy from the sun. So let's talk more about the food chains. Food chains are basically simple. They are one feeding pattern. It shows an arrow starting out from this to this to this to this to this to the next. A leaf is being eaten by a caterpillar, which is eaten by a chameleon, which is eaten by a snake, which is eaten by a mongoose. That is one pattern. It always starts with a producer or an autotroph. So for example, in a food chain, you're always going to have it start out with a producer. Where is this producer getting all of their energy from? The sun. So hopefully you remember that. Food webs are a little bit more complicated because they can show many different paths. For example, one organism doesn't just eat one thing typically. It usually has a variety of different organisms that it can eat. They're more complex. They show many feeding relationships. Important, remember to note this, that the arrows in food chains and webs do not represent who eats who. All right, the arrows show the transfer of energy from one organism to another. So for example, let's start out with this little bush over here that this deer or antelope or whatever eats. Okay, the energy is being transferred from the producer up to the consumer. So the consumer is eating the producer. So the arrow is in the direction of which way the energy is transferring. So the arrows are always going to go to whoever is eating it, not who gets eaten. All right, so let's take a look. Your next set of questions here has a little video that we're going to watch about energy and matter. Go ahead and take notes. Let's see, is it working? There we go. It's only about 3.5 minutes. Take notes on your sheet.
Activities such as growth, respiration, and reproduction. On the savanna, as in nearly every ecosystem on Earth, sunlight provides the energy that powers life. While nutrients and the other critical building blocks of life, such as carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and water, enter the ecosystem from the non-living environment, the atmosphere, and the earth or sea from which the ecosystem arises. Solar energy continuously bombards the Earth day after day, year after year, providing an essentially limitless source of energy for the Earth's ecosystems. That energy flows through ecosystems, starting with the plants that convert the light energy to chemical energy via photosynthesis. Energy captured by plants is then transferred to the herbivores that graze on the plants. From there, part of the energy is transferred to predators as they eat the herbivores. Scavengers also obtain part of the energy that flooded into the ecosystem as sunlight as they pick at the remains left by predators. Finally, decomposers, breaking down what's left to the molecular level, obtain the last remaining bits of energy from what started as beams of light. It is fortunate for life on Earth that the flow of energy from the sun is essentially limitless, because as energy flows from plant to decomposer, each organism along the way releases part of the energy they capture as heat to the atmosphere, energy that is forever lost for biological purposes within the ecosystem. Thus, for the flow of energy, and for the flow of life itself to continue in an ecosystem, an outside source must constantly be injecting it with new energy. Unlike solar energy, the nutrients essential to life are limited. The Earth only has so much carbon or phosphorus or nitrogen available for living organisms. For example, each year, photosynthesis in plants and other organisms captures approximately 1/7 of the carbon available in the atmosphere. If biological processes, such as cellular respiration, didn't return most of this captured carbon back to the atmosphere, life as we know it on Earth would rapidly end, as there would be no carbon in the atmosphere for plants or other photosynthetic organisms to carry out life processes, such as capturing the energy in sunlight. So in order for life on Earth to continue, nutrients must be constantly recycled by the Earth's ecosystems. Thus, energy flows through ecosystems while nutrients cycle through them. The processes by which energy flows through and nutrients are cycled within an ecosystem play a major role in shaping the complex interactions that occur between populations within the Earth's great living communities. Let's now take a look at how the energy and nutrients crucial to life travel through ecosystems and the interactions their travels generate.
Okay, so in a couple days we're going to look more specifically at the types of nutrients that are going to be cycled, but this should give you some idea right now of how energy flows through an ecosystem. All right, so let's recap real quick. Food chains and food webs show the transfer of energy, between organisms. Remember that the arrows represent where the energy is moving to. So from the mouse to the snake, from the snake to the hawk. So the energy is moving in the direction that the arrows are pointing. The movement of energy through an ecosystem is one way, right? All energy for life originates and comes from, hopefully you said and chimed in, sun, right? So the sun is the source of all of our energy here for life on Earth, which we talked about last year in Earth science. So here we have the sun, which is going to be used by our producers to convert into energy through photosynthesis, and in that process then all of the consumers are able to then get energy and food. Sunlight to our producer, to our primary, to our secondary, to our tertiary if we had it, and decomposers. So at the bottom here, put that on your paper if you don't have it, or fill it in. We have autotrophs, again as a reminder, are producers. Consumers can't produce their own food, so they're called heterotrophs. We have a primary consumer, which is the first one that eats, like an herbivore. Then we have a secondary consumer, which eats the meat. Secondary consumer, it's also a heterotroph. And then if we had something beyond that, we would have a tertiary and maybe even a quaternary type of consumer. Decomposers are kind of all the way throughout, because they are going to decompose at every single level, but again, they are heterotrophs. We can take a look at this through an energy pyramid. The transfer of energy can also be represented by a diagram called an energy pyramid. Each level of the pyramid is called a trophic level, which means feeding level. That's it. So at the bottom, we have producers. And the reason why we have so many producers at the bottom is because they have to support everything else that's above it. Then we have our primary consumers, our secondary consumers, and our third or tertiary consumers over there at the top. So as you can see, there are going to be less cougars or mountain lions than there are sunflowers at the bottom, and that's because the producers need to be able to have enough biomass to actually support all of the top predators up above. The size of each trophic level or feeding level depends on the amount of energy present. So as you move from trophic level A to D, the trophic levels get smaller, and this is to show you the amount of energy actually decreases as we move up. There's only about 10% of the energy that's passed on. Star that, highlight it, circle it, whatever you need to do. Only about 10% of the energy is passed on from one to the next. And that is because most of that, where does the other 90% go? Well, not all of it can be passed on, because you are actually going to use some of it yourself. Some energy is lost to the environment as heat, and some of the energy has remained or stored in indigestible parts, things like bones, feathers, teeth, fur. Like, we use some of that energy ourselves, and some of it's just stored in the organism. Some of it can't be passed on. So 90% is either lost to the environment as heat or is used by the organism itself. The other 10% is what gets passed on from the producer to the consumer to the next consumer, all the way up in that food pyramid or their energy pyramid. Okay. Example, this owl pellet is filled with bones, teeth, fur, and it could not be digested by the owl, so therefore it didn't get any nutrients, or it didn't get any energy out of that. The owl regurgitates one after each meal, and we're not going to be able to actually dissect an owl pellet this year, so consider yourself lucky. Go out and find one. How does matter move through an ecosystem? It moves by nutrients, and it's called a cycle. So matter is recycled, and we use that by decomposers, bacteria, fungi, etc. They break down dead organisms and return the nutrients back to the soil. Remember, if this is going too fast, don't forget to pause in between. A biomass pyramid is similar to an energy pyramid, but it shows the level of biomass at each level, and that's all living matter. The most energy level is at A, so there's going to be more biomass there. The least energy level is at D, so there's going to be fewer levels or fewer biomass or less organisms at D, which is what we talked about earlier. You can't have, as many blades of grass. You can't have as many cougars or tigers as you do blades of grass, because there wouldn't be enough energy below them supporting them. There wouldn't be enough meat that would be able to be consumed, enough producers that would be able, herbivores that would be able to consume the amount of producers and then be able to support the rest of them on top. All right, some summary questions. So take a look at some of these. What are some differences between food webs and chains? What do the arrows represent? How does movements of energy and matter differ? What organisms recycle back? And how is energy lost? How much is lost? Where are producers and other consumers? We'll take a look at these in your small groups tomorrow. I'll see you then.